Siri Russell, Director of the Office of Equity and Inclusion. I'm gonna share my screen with the group here. And I would note that I am joined today by two very special friends, Sue Donovan and Molly Schwartzberg of the University of Virginia Special Collections, and they'll be a part of this presentation.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
So as Supervisor Galloway already noted, we are here today to talk about the time capsule that was recovered from the foundation of the At-Ready Monument. Today, we're going to give some really brief background, and then we're going to spend the bulk of the time with Sue Donovan, who will be sharing with the board some of the detailed information about the recovery efforts of the contents of that time capsule. We'll speak a bit about long-term exhibition, leave some room for questions. And then ultimately, yes, this is an action item where we will be putting to the board a proposal to deed the time capsule contents to the University of Virginia Special Collections Library.
And Siri, should we be seeing a presentation at this point?
Oh, yes, you should. Thank you. That's an excellent question. And I realized I skipped a step. I didn't actually share my screen. Thank you, Ned, because I was just going to go.
I started to sense that, which
all by myself. So, yeah, now you get to actually see what I'm talking about. Everyone can see that?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I just recapped the agenda, but you can see that I have that actually typed out here for your reading pleasure. So again, just briefly, we're going to hit that background, spend some time actually focused with Sue Donovan on the detailed recovery of the time capsule contents, and then talk about the long-term exhibition options. And then of course, there's some time for questions right at the end there. So brief background, as many of you know, the time capsule was placed inside a copper box in the foundation of the At-Ready Monument in May of 1909. If you fast forward, a little over 100 years here, in August of 2020, this board did hold a public hearing to remove the At-Ready Monument from Court Square, which was followed on September 12th of 2020 with the actual removal. And at the time that the At-Ready Monument was removed, the time capsule was also removed with consultation from UVA Special Collections staff. This is an image of what we saw when the time capsule was actually recovered, just to give you guys a little bit of context. And then this image is moments before it was actually lifted out of the ground. And I chose this image because it's, if you look closely at my cell phone there, you can actually see an image of UVA Special Collections conservator Sue Donovan, who sort of walked us through that process. It is actually the person I'm now going to turn it over to tell us about those recovery efforts.
Thank you, Siri. That was a really incredible moment that you shared with me. So my name is Sue Donovan, and I'm the conservator for special collections at the University of Virginia Library. And I'm happy to be presenting to you the Board of Supervisors about the time capsule that was unearthed from the monument on September 12th. So my specialty is in book and paper conservation, but I did reach out to quite a few conservators in different specialties, such as the Virginia State Archaeological Conservator, a local textile conservator, and conservators and historians who had dealt with time capsules before in order to prepare for this time capsule and to help with its assessment once it had been uncovered. So I was first contacted about the time capsule by Siri, and during a call with her and Blake Aplenalp, the Chief of Facilities Planning and Construction, I discussed what I knew about time capsules, including the potential for damage. So generally speaking, a time capsule is an enclosure made of a sturdy material, such as metal or stone, that is buried underground, like this time capsule in Raleigh. Siri, if you'll advance the photo. Maybe it's one more back. Oh no, it faded away. So Time capsules are buried under monuments or otherwise enclosed in a component of a building, and such as another time capsule that was recently uncovered from a granite sphere on the Salt Lake City Church of Latter-day Saints Temple. There might be another photo there. Well, we might have missed some transitions that I put into the PowerPoint. But so in general, time capsules commemorate a special event, such as the erection of a building or monument, or the turn of the century, or of a specific person. Their contents are selected by specific communities or organizations that are responsible for the special event, monument, or building. Historian Sarah Beetham notes that time capsules are frequently found underneath monuments erected in the 19-teens and 20s because they were actually part of the fundraising event around the statue itself. So the at-ready time capsule was filled with documents and artifacts celebrating the Confederacy, and so it represents the culture of a particular community that erected the monument. Next slide. So what can go wrong with time capsules? Time capsules that are buried underground are at a great risk of water infiltration, especially when placed underneath monuments that weigh thousands of tons. Even a well-constructed and sealed time capsule can be breached and its contents damaged beyond repair. The time capsule underneath the Lee Monument in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is what you see here, was crushed by the weight of the statue and its contents were unrecoverable. I spoke with one of the conservators in Raleigh who participated in the salvage efforts prior to the removal of the at-ready monument. And they shared with me that because the time capsule had been breached, all that was left of the paper in the capsule were small little pieces of text amidst the debris. Maybe we can get a photo of that, Siri. If you advance one more. Yeah, there we go. So this picture of a wooden box, it had been within the time capsule underneath the Raleigh monument. And what you see behind the person holding the box is what was left of the paper. And so that could have been an indicator for me of what was to come. So the reason why water penetration is so damaging is that water solubilizes acids that are in late 19th and 20th century papers. And groundwater and rainwater also carry debris and silt that can further damage paper. And even a small amount of humidity can cause mold growth, which is devastating even to good quality paper. We can't rule out either that there would be some kind of microbial action within the time capsule, given the foul odors that often accompany time capsules. So on the next slide, I'll talk about what could go wrong with the particular time capsule underneath the at-ready statue. So based on the list that Siri had shared with me, we knew that the contents of the time capsule were primarily paper, and they had been put in there in 1909. So I was anticipating that there could be mold growth. I described Albemarle County representatives that mold growth on early 20th century paper would be very damaging, and that any rupture of the time capsule box could be disastrous. That said, the knowledge that the time capsule had been made of copper was very hopeful. I had hope about that because copper can act as a natural fungicide and pesticide. And I had discovered that there was a double-walled copper time capsule buried in 1915 in a cornerstone of the Arlington National Cemetery, which had been removed intact. So while I knew that there was a greater chance that the at-ready time capsule would be in poor shape, I still thought there might be some hope that the contents could be in fair condition. So with approval from my director and from my associate university librarian, I offered to receive the time capsule at my lab after it was taken out of the ground in order to assess the condition of its contents and perform stabilization as necessary. Next slide. So I was watching the live stream and I was on hand via telephone to answer questions with Siri when the time capsule actually came out of the ground. And when I saw that hole in the cement filled with water, I knew I needed to adapt a salvage approach, but I wasn't prepared for the extent of the damage of the paper-based items. Next slide. So the time capsule contents were completely bathed in water. The foundation of concrete into which the copper box had been placed had expanded over time, which pushed in on the copper box and popped the lid off, allowing rainwater to come in. And this meant that the time capsule had been soaking in groundwater since slightly after the box had been put into the ground in 1909. Silt from the groundwater colored the water brown, coated the exterior of the piles with mud, and effectively acted as an adhesive in between the different layers of paper. And as the water level rose, the contents of the time capsule became bathed in what the Virginia State Archaeological Conservator called an acidic soup. It was not pleasant to smell either. Next slide. Inside the box, the acidic water had stripped the outer layers of metal, leaving the sides of the box orange and shiny, which you can see on the far left picture, while areas above the waterline were a dull greenish brown. Similarly, when the commemorative badges were excavated from the time capsule, the metal was shiny and bright, not at all what would be expected from metal obtained from an archaeological context. However, on exposure to air for the first time in over a century, the brilliance of the copper quickly tarnished. And you can see the difference from when I first uncovered the metal in the middle photo to, I think that was roughly an hour later on the right side in the photo. And on the next slide, there's a photo, there's going to be a video. And this is of me uncovering or recovering the metal that you see on the right. It was sunk in there. I'm with my left hand, I'm trying to use the capillary action of the non-woven spun polyester backing to try to peel apart the paper layers so that I could get at that metal. It was very tedious and very difficult work, but it was really incredible to finally uncover something like that metal that was distinguishable and that was clearly something that had weathered the course of time. I think we'll go ahead and advance, Siri. The textiles within the time capsule were also intact, although there was a small battle flag that was heavily stained and only the faintest colors were discernible. What you see in the left-hand photo is me peeling back a silk badge that was listed in the contents. And in the video on the right is me uncovering the battle flag that had been rolled up that was at the very bottom of the time capsule. And I didn't want to pull it out all at once because I didn't know how weak the wood of the flag was. And I didn't want to cause any further damage. All right, next slide. In contrast to the metal objects in the textiles, the paper-based items did not fare as well. Unlike paper made from rags prior to the 1850s, paper made with wood pulp from the 1910s and 20s has very short fibers and is inherently acidic. The paper simply did not have the structural integrity to withstand over a century of immersion in dirty acidic water. The contents were in two distinct rectangular piles, with what looked like paper pulp and other debris collected in the middle. The exterior edges of the paper piles received the most mechanical damage, perhaps due to water and sediment entering between the individual leaves as the water came into the time capsule, which caused the paper to slough away. Because of this damage, there was no way to identify and separate one item from another, and everything felt soft to the touch, like the bottom of a lake. I usually am able to discern when I'm doing paper treatments. I'm usually able to feel some kind of inherent quality of the paper, but when I touched these items, it just poofed away. It was really, I'd never seen anything like that before. However, I did find that I could use strips of non-woven polyester and the capillary action of wet pages to peel apart sections and reveal some less damaged text in the middle of the piles, which is what you can see me trying to do in the top left corner and on the bottom right photo. At this point, Special Collections Curator, you can advance, next slide, thank you. Special Collections Curator Molly Schwartzberg and Digital Production Group staff member Eze Amos photographed pages that I was able to reveal in this manner to help with future cross-checking against known list of contents of the time capsule. Paper that I was able to peel off in small sections, I laid to dry on the drying rack in the conservation lab. And a few of the thicker sections I sent to be frozen at the UVA Library Preservation Freezer. And at the time that I'm talking to you today, the frozen sections are still not ready to be removed from the freezer because of how wet they were when they first went in. So that's a process that will probably take another month or so till we can try to see if we can separate those pages that have been frozen. Next slide. So again, these are more images of what I found really interesting about items that came out of the time capsule and what they looked like afterwards. On the far left, I'm peeling away a picture postcard of the UVH Chapel. And when it first came out of the time capsule, the image was very clear and you can really discern that it is the UVH Chapel. But upon drying, the photographic emulsion, it changed and it kind of formed this cloudy image. So it's a little harder to discern what it is. And at the top is the metal that I showed you before, where you see how it was when it first came out of the time capsule an hour later, and then just a couple days ago. Next slide. So from my perspective as a conservator, I think it was quite surprising that we were able to recover as much as we did from the breached copper box. While the acidic composition of the water meant that most of the paper-based items were damaged beyond repair, it did prevent a buildup of corrosion products that is typical in archaeological metals, so that details on the commemorative badges can be clearly discerned. And it would be really interesting to do some research about where those metals were made and who manufactured them. And we can do that work now because there wasn't a lot of corrosion on the metals as they came out. And I do think that the acidic water, the environment, which was low in oxygen, and the fungicidal properties of the copper box also allowed the two textiles to be preserved. So currently the metal and textile items are being kept in temporary housing that aims to achieve low humidity conditions. To preserve their condition, the metal items should be kept in tightly sealed boxes with silica gel and humidity detectors that keep the humidity low and prevent further degradation. Next slide. And I'd just like to thank everyone who was in the lab with me that day. My colleague Nicole for her support and extra set of hands, Molly for her curatorial guidance and her cool head, and Eze, who was key to photographing and preserving the process. I'm also very thankful that the county entrusted me and the library with the salvage of this time capsule. It's something that not a lot of conservators or curators get to witness, and Siri and Emily's alacrity and professionalism really helped me immensely as I moved through the process. So thank you so much, and thank you to the Board of Supervisors for listening to me today.
Sue, I'll imagine supervisors wish, is this a good point, Siri, to make questions or comments, or should we hold off on that?
If you can hold off, I'm just going to make a couple of quick points and then we'll open it up for questions.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. And so we did just want to take a moment after having seen Sue's really detailed presentation to make a couple points about the long-term exhibition considerations for these items. One of the things that Sue alluded to here, but that I think is important to sort of elevate, is the significant investment in preserving these items, both from a physical and digital material point of view. There's also a matter of community accessibility, which we have had several conversations with Special Collections Library here, and we have a lot of confidence in their ability to maintain the accessibility of these items to our local community, and even as Sue alluded to increase really the storytelling that goes along with these as a part of that. I think from what we have been able to gather from the university and from Sue and Molly, who are both here, is that they do have a commitment to a long-term investment in the exhibition of these materials, and also a commitment to both the larger community and to maintaining some connection to the county. And to that point, Molly, if you wouldn't mind taking just a moment to maybe talk briefly about the future plans for unveiling jointly with the county and Special Collections the materials. Molly?
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you so much, Siri. And thank you very much for having us. Like Sue said, I'm really grateful for having been able to witness the unpacking, if we can even call it that, of this time capsule and discovering the items. It was truly remarkable. And even as we were going through the box, we were talking about how interesting it was going to be for members of the community to see what was in the time capsule. And in fact, I had questions from friends when I was out walking the dog who said, do you guys have anything to do with the time capsule? So it became clear to me that there's a lot of interest in the general public in the time capsule. So in conversation with Siri and Sue, we came up with the idea of doing a sort of Zoom grand reveal event for the public in January, in conjunction, so with both the county and Special Collections and the Now Center for the Study of the Civil War, which is at UVA and actually shares our building. And so they have a strong relationship with the Special Collections and use our Civil War collections heavily. So we talked to the director and they're very excited about participating. So we'd like to put together a program that would be open to the general public that would basically include Sue doing a demonstration about the conservation or salvage effort, the county presenting what they'd like to present about the material and its history or context, and then the Now Center representative discussing sort of the scholarly perspective or some information on memorials and the Civil War, things like that. I think they're contemplating the approach they might take for such an event. We'd really love to do something like this. It would be open to the general public in order to, like I said, sort of the grand reveal or unveil the object so that its significance and the historical moment is properly documented, and also so that everybody in the community has a chance to participate and ask questions and discuss.
Thank you, Molly. And Molly, am I also correct in noting that if the contents of the time capsule were deeded to Special Collections Library, that Albemarle County would maintain the name and the title of the exhibit, so that it's noted as being from Albemarle County, Virginia, wherever it travels?
Yes, absolutely. That when we acquire materials, we are very careful about the language that we use to describe them. And I can include specific instructions to the archivist to ensure that Albemarle County is front and center in the title of the item. And when people borrow items from us, let's say it were to ever be borrowed for display elsewhere, they are required to cite the title that we give to a collection based on our own language. So yeah, we have some good control over that.
Thank you, Molly. We would like to turn it now to questions from the board.